Hello, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Brandon Cohan. I lead MuleSoft's Advisory Services Group in North America, and I'm joined today by Corey McNair from Forrester Consulting. We have a great session today focused on the value of a better integration strategy and on the total economic impact of MuleSoft's Anypoint platform. At MuleSoft, we know from our work with thousands of customers across nearly every major industry that by taking an API-led connectivity integration approach, you can generate numerous benefits such as increased speed, agility, and scalability for your enterprise, and furthermore, positive ROI with MuleSoft's Anypoint platform. Forrester Consulting has conducted a total economic impact, or TEI, study to examine the potential ROI enterprises can realize by deploying Anypoint platform. To better understand the benefits, costs, and risks associated with this investment, Forrester interviewed several customers with years of experience using Anypoint platform. We'll share the key results in this webinar, as well as a framework to help you measure the value of your own integration strategy. Before we get to it, just a few housekeeping items. First, a recording of this webinar will be distributed via email within 24 hours. Please submit your questions throughout via the questions widget on the left-hand side of the webinar portal. You can also engage with social media, tweet #MuleTalks to join the conversation. And finally, we'd love to get your feedback from today, so please rate this webinar by selecting the survey widget at any point during the webinar. As far as agenda for today, we'll go through the following. First, we'll start with the brief introduction of the value of integration and APIs. We'll then get into Forrester's report, where we'll go through what is TEI, go through an executive summary of the findings, the detailed analysis, and the financial summary. And then finally, we'll close out with an introduction of the value framework that MuleSoft has created to help organizations measure the value of integrations and APIs. And then finally, we'll get to Q&A. So first, let's introduce the value of integrations and APIs. We all know that we're in the middle of a generational shift in technology. The convergence of digital forces, mobile, SaaS, cloud, big data, IoT, and social is creating a different competitive landscape and operating environment for the enterprise. The half-life of companies is falling. It used to be that 80% of companies on the Fortune 500 would still be there after a decade. Today, this disruption means that enterprises have no better than a 1 in 2 chance of surviving. The clock speed of business is forever changed. So the question is, how do you compete? If you look at two of the most successful companies in the world, Alphabet and Amazon, a common trait they share is their maniac focus on moving faster than any of their competitors. For them, winning is all about speed, agility, inventiveness, and an ability to try many experiments rapidly and fail fast. This has powered them up the Fortune 500 rankings like no company before them. But unfortunately, not every enterprise is Amazon or Alphabet. The reality is, most organizations struggle to keep up in this digital era. They're faced with the most ubiquitous challenge across all industries today, what we call the IT delivery gap. And it's really a familiar story, right? IT has a relatively fixed set of resources and a constrained capacity to deliver on new projects. In fact, many of MuleSoft customers tell us that 80% of their efforts and costs are typically going towards simply keeping the lights on. However, new digital forces are creating increasing demand from the business on the same constrained resources, causing IT to fall behind even further. And often under pressure, IT takes shortcuts, creates technical debt, even while complexity is increasing, further compounding the problem. Net-net, the gap between business needs and IT's ability to deliver on those needs widens with an accelerated pace, and this is the IT delivery gap. Now, what if central IT were to federate delivery and innovation across the organization by building reusable assets and enabling self-service rather than working on entire projects themselves? By leveraging the resources and capabilities outside of central IT, organizations can make a step change in delivery speed and capacity. This will, of course, require change in the way that IT operates, creating reusable assets and enabling the rest of the organization rather than just delivering on projects themselves. Let's dive a little bit deeper to understand what we really mean by a new IT operating model. Fundamentally, central IT needs to move away from trying to deliver all IT projects themselves and start building these reusable assets to enable the business to deliver some of their own projects on their own. In this new operating model, IT changes its mindset to think about producing assets that will be consumed by others in lines of business. You get this virtuous cycle where reuse becomes prevalent across all IT projects. And with this model, your developers are happy as they're far more productive because they don't have to recreate the wheel over and over again. They no longer have to spend hours maintaining duplicative code, and they can spend more time on innovation. What's more, the business is happy as time to market for their initiatives is drastically improved, directly impacting your enterprise's top and or bottom line. In the new IT operating model, you package up core IT assets and capabilities into what we call the modern API. Over the years, the term API has been used generically to describe a connectivity interface to an application. However, over the past few years, the modern API has taken on some new characteristics. Modern APIs adhere to standards, typically HTTP and REST, that are developer-friendly, they're easily accessible, and understood broadly. They're treated more like products than code. They're designed for consumption for specific audiences, such as mobile developers. They're documented, and they're versioned in a way that users can have certain expectations of their maintenance and lifecycle. Because they're much more standardized, they have a much stronger discipline for security and governance and are monitored and managed for performance and scale. Armed with the modern API, we can consider an architectural approach that we call API-led connectivity that encourages production of reusable assets and enables their consumption to drive speed and innovation across your enterprise. At its core, API-led connectivity provides an approach for connecting and exposing assets. With this approach, rather than connecting things point to point, every asset becomes a managed API, a modern API, which makes it discoverable through self-service without losing control. Let's say you're developing a web application to provide real-time order status and order history for sales team to engage with customers. For this example, let's assume you have customer data in SAP and in Salesforce, inventory data in SAP, and perhaps some order data in an e-commerce system. With an API-led approach, you follow a 3-tier architecture across system, process, and experience. At the system API layer, you unlock data from SAP, Salesforce, and e-commerce systems by putting APIs in front of them, providing consistent, managed, and secure access to back-end systems. At the process API layer, you can build on the system APIs by combining and streamlining customer data from multiple sources into a customer API, breaking down application silos. Then, mapping customers and orders to create order status and order history APIs. These process APIs take core assets and combine them with some business logic to create a higher level of value. And importantly, these higher level objects are now useful assets that can be further reused, so they should also be APIs themselves. Finally, in this example, an API is built that brings together the order status and history, delivering the data specifically needed by the web app. These are experience APIs that are designed specifically for consumption by a specific end user app or device. These APIs allow app developers to quickly innovate on projects by consuming the underlying assets without having to know how the data got there. In fact, if anything changes to any of the systems or processes underneath, it shouldn't require any changes to the app itself. Now, with this API-led connectivity approach, when you're tasked with a new mobile app to develop, you already have these reusable assets to build from, eliminating all the work needed to build them. Once again, your developers are happy, the business is even happier as time to market is exceptionally fast. Let's look briefly at a case study. Air Malta, the flag carrier airline of Malta, was in a similar state we see across our customer base: aging IT infrastructure, a need to transform IT from a cost center to a profit center, a need to offer more connected customer experiences across their channels of commerce. Air Malta fundamentally needed to adopt a new operating model, which they've done, and they've created significant value for their enterprise as a result. With reusable APIs, Air Malta has integrated flight planning solutions from Lufthansa to optimize route planning, improve flight operations management, and to handle reservations more quickly. And through this reuse, they were able to deliver in 1/3 of the time that they originally expected. Air Malta also reused these APIs to integrate with Ryanair to sell its flights from the Ryanair website, extending their revenue channel. This project only took 11 weeks, reducing the standard delivery timeline by almost 2/3. Now, how do you know that this will really help your business thrive? If you're going to completely change and transform your company's IT operating model, you need justification that it will deliver tangible results. And without the ability to articulate this value, it's difficult to drive the right conversations with business stakeholders and to motivate integration project teams to adopt new approaches. To help tell this value story, MuleSoft commissioned Forrester Consulting to run a total economic impact study for Anypoint Platform. I'll now turn to Corey to share the results of the study. Corey?
Thank you, Brandon. Forrester's Total Economic Impact team has a long history of helping companies quantify the benefits of the technologies that they offer. I led this study on MuleSoft's Anypoint Platform, and I'm happy to be here today to talk to you about the findings. To give everyone a quick overview of what I'll be going over today, first I'll give an explanation of what a Total Economic Impact report is, and then I'll go over the executive summary of our findings. Then I'll review the 3 main sections of the study: the composite organization, the benefits and costs, and the financial summary. Before we move ahead, I do want to point out that this presentation is an abridged version of a complete case study. The case study is informed by Forrester's interviews with MuleSoft's Anypoint Platform customers. MuleSoft provided the introductions to its Anypoint Platform customers. However, as an independent third party, Forrester had full control over the content included in the case study. So, before we discuss the results of the study, I want to spend a few minutes walking you through the TEI methodology. Forrester has found in our research that next-level business case justifications are increasingly vital for any technology investment. So what is an effective business case? Some business cases look at the TCO, the total cost of ownership. This approach looks solely at what a solution is going to cost and what it's going to save them in terms of hardware, software, and labor. Then there's an ROI business case study. Here we're looking at the impact of that technology on users in terms of productivity and effectiveness, among other things. With TEI, we go further than total cost of ownership or even ROI by looking at the total business impact, including risk and uncertainty, as well as future strategic impact. We feel this presents a holistic picture of that investment and aids in making a more complete decision. The TEI methodology has been in use at Forrester for over 20 years. We've used it to evaluate the impact of many different technologies and solutions, so it's a very flexible framework that can be applied in a lot of different situations. It consists of 4 main areas. We look at benefits and costs. This is fairly straightforward. Costs are things like licensing costs or implementation costs. Benefits are the impact on the business. We also look at flexibility options for the future, and we view all of these through the lens of risk. So we risk adjust every category to arrive at the total economic impact. For the study, we took a multi-step approach. We started with some due diligence. We gathered some expertise internally at Forrester, looping in our application development and delivery analysts, and we spoke to the subject matter experts at MuleSoft. We then spoke to 4 different customers who are using MuleSoft's Anypoint Platform today. We do this to really understand what the customer's experience has been. We were able to ask them directly, what kind of benefits have you seen? What have you gotten out of the investment? And we'll go into the details of the organizational profile later in this presentation to give you some more context as to where our data came from. We then constructed a representative financial model based upon the data gathered during the customer interview process. And I'll go into the detail about that later, but the financial model is meant to provide organizations with a framework to measure and evaluate the financial impact of investing in MuleSoft's Anypoint Platform. And finally, we wrote the case study to summarize those financial findings, but also to present some of the color behind the numbers and really talk about what we heard in those interviews beyond just the financial metrics. Before we go into the details, here's a summary of our disclosures. As you can see, the document is an abridged version of a full case study. MuleSoft commissioned the study and Forrester Consulting delivered it. Forrester makes no assumptions as to the potential return on investment that other organizations will receive. And MuleSoft reviewed and provided feedback to Forrester, but we maintained editorial control over the study and its findings. The customers' names for the interviews were provided by MuleSoft, and Forrester does not endorse MuleSoft explicitly. So now I'll review our high-level findings. Businesses are working nonstop to keep up with the digital transformation of day-to-day tasks. APIs and integrations provide the underlying foundation for application connectivity and business agility to push forward in digital transformation. However, implementation of APIs without a full lifecycle API management and integration solution can result in lost time. Prior to using Anypoint Platform, interviewees' organizations were typically in either of two states, just beginning to build APIs in-house or seeking to enhance and scale their API development and deliver more integration solutions. The interviewees considered several API management platforms that either improved API development and management or had integration technology to build APIs. Anypoint Platform was their chosen solution to effectively address both needs. After adopting Anypoint Platform, interviewees' organizations produced more API-led, high-value projects through increased reuse of APIs and delivery of a high number of integration solutions. Consistently across all of these interviews, we heard how MuleSoft's Anypoint Platform helped these teams to resolve their challenges. Just to jump to the ending, customers experienced a 445% return on their investment in MuleSoft's Anypoint Platform over a 3-year period. And now I'll share details on how we derive this ROI. For the study, Forrester interviewed 4 Anypoint Platform customers that varied in size and industry across CPG, financial services, healthcare, and insurance. They are all involved in the application building space. Again, these customer interviews formed the foundation of the analysis. Some of the key catalysts for the customers searching for new API management and integration platform included that API creation was scattered across multiple platforms and storage solutions. They did not have a solution in place that addressed both API management and integrations in one place. APIs and integrations also did not lend themselves to reuse. An interviewee said that they used multiple technologies to create APIs. Each of them served different purposes to projects, including on the management integrational side. Between all the platforms, APIs were created mostly on a project or product-specific basis, leaving the APIs nearly unusable for later projects. Some other key results since adopting MuleSoft Anypoint Platform included that organizations were able to finally realize projects that were stalled or difficult to stand up. In one case, an organization that had struggled to conduct integrations with an external partner due to different tooling, they were able to finally stand up. Anypoint Platform helped them by providing an integration of a source system that uses APIs to supply data to internal and external users. Organizations also gained comprehensive visibility of their internal API marketplace, which led to increasing API reuse across projects because of the improved awareness of APIs that could be reused. Time spent on the creation and maintenance of APIs and integrations was also reduced as a result of increased API reuse and a shift in mindset at organizations to build APIs for reuse in later projects. Also, since the Anypoint Platform helps to scale integrations, the organizations were able to reduce the number of integration technologies that they used. Consistently across all of these interviews, we heard that Anypoint Platform helped customers with application building, specifically the reuse of APIs across projects and its ease of use for conducting integrations. The case study, which you can review after this webinar, includes candid quotes from customers and should give you a good idea about their experience with MuleSoft's Anypoint Platform. Based on the customer interviews, Forrester created what we call a composite organization. The composite organization reflects a combination of experiences of all 4 companies that we interviewed. The composite organization forms the basis for the financial analysis. Essentially, it's a tool for us to discuss the benefits as well as the costs experienced by Anypoint Platform customers in aggregate. Our composite organization is a large company with annual revenue of $10 billion, 10,000 employees, and 15 users of Anypoint Platform across 10 cores and 3 servers. The interviewed customer described the 5 primary benefits of using Anypoint Platform, and the most significant being the increase in API reuse value through Anypoint Platform. There's also incremental revenue from contributions to projects, cost savings from reduced maintenance of APIs and integrations, time savings toward building new APIs, and cost savings from retired technologies. I will go into the details of the three largest benefits in turn and explain how we modeled these into our composite organization. Since adopting Anypoint Platform, customers are writing API code and applying it to projects throughout the same platform, encouraging the reuse of APIs. According to one interviewee, APIs now exist on a more on-demand basis for reuse in projects, thanks to their visibility, the visibility that Anypoint Platform provides to their API marketplace. The number here reflects estimates for year 3, where we quantify the value of this benefit by assuming there are 560 APIs available for reuse, and 75% of those APIs are reused per year. On average, time spent creating each API totals 168 hours. The average fully loaded hourly compensation for both international and domestic developers totals $90. We apply 15% risk adjustment to make the analysis conservative. This results in a $4.3 million value over 3 years. The slides here share the highlights, but the full calculation tables for each benefit are included for you to review in the study. Outside of time savings that reusing APIs generates, this benefit here speaks to the time savings that Anypoint Platform brought to building new APIs. The driver of this benefit is teams having to move between fewer technologies for API management and implementation, meaning that developers can stay within Anypoint Platform and build the APIs. We quantify the value of this benefit by assuming the following. By year 3, at least 240 new APIs will be created annually. Of the average 168 hours it takes to build an API, Anypoint Platform will help to reduce the amount of time by 20%. The average developer fully loaded hourly compensation will total $90, and we apply a 15% risk adjustment to keep the analysis conservative. This results in a $1.2 million saving over 3 years. Since deploying Anypoint Platform, developers are able to reduce the number of integrations with APIs that they had to conduct to make applications because of API reuse. As a result, developers had fewer integrations to maintain and save time on maintenance. Alongside this, Anypoint Platform's single-pane view of all of its APIs and integrations help developers to identify integration issues with an API used across projects and to proactively prevent application downtime. We quantify the value of this benefit by assuming that the composite organization had 120 APIs and integrations in year 1, and that number climbed to 560 by year 3. The average time spent maintaining API integrations per year was 20 hours. Developers were able to reduce their time spent on maintenance by 90%. The average developer fully loaded compensation, again, was $90, and we applied a risk adjustment of 15% to keep it in conservative analysis. This results in a $1.1 million savings over 3 years. A key benefit that couldn't be quantified for a study based on the interviews was Anypoint Platform's impact on improved project velocity. This was primarily due to the varied states of projects that we discussed with the interviewees and timelines that the organizations had worked of the projects that the organizations had worked on. Shortened timelines from project kickoff to completion due to reduced time spent on API and integration management led to developers having more time to work on additional projects throughout the year. Turning to the cost side of the equation, customers spoke to 2 categories of costs associated with MuleSoft's Anypoint Platform: licensing costs and staffing costs. License costs scale based on cores using the solution. For the composite organization, we assume a little over $558,000 in licensing costs by year 3, based on it having a 3 on-premises services with 10 cores each. 3 on-premises servers with 10 cores each, pardon. As for staffing costs, there will be 1 team member dedicated to managing Anypoint Platform, spending 50% of their time to making sure it runs smoothly. The annual salary of this employee is over $187,000. So far, we've focused on how MuleSoft customers are leveraging the platform today, but we also spoke to them about what they expect the flexibility to be to realize even greater value in the future. Particularly, we heard that they're expanding API use to partners and customers, such as allowing an existing internal API to be published externally with a different set of security policies and usage limits. In addition, they're planning on consolidating and controlling the organization's use of other partners and providers' APIs through the Anypoint Platform, so they appear right alongside internal APIs. As we mentioned earlier, we also take into account risks to the benefits and costs that we show as part of the TEI analysis. This helps us to arrive at a conservative, grounded assessment of the financial impact technology may have. On the benefit side, we apply a downward risk adjustment. Since organizations may vary on integration scenarios and needs for APIs, the average complexity of the APIs built can influence time spent in development. And previous solutions may have already been contributing to time savings in API creation. On the cost side, we assume that things like the licensing costs will vary based on the number of cores and employees that the organization will use to run and maintain the platform. So in summary, for a company similar to our composite organization, we expect a 445% return on investment, a $6.4 million return on the net present value, and $1.4 million in costs. Now I hand it back to you, Brandon.
Great. Thanks, Corey. So going back to the beginning, our examples of Amazon and Alphabet from earlier, and how the successes of their business really rides on their ability to innovate and move fast. The reality is that businesses with a cutting-edge integration strategy remove integration as a barrier and transform it into a business enabler. Yet still, integration value, the value of this strategy, is really often challenging to quantify. So at MuleSoft, we've developed a framework that you can use to help IT leaders structure, quantify, and articulate the business value of a better integration strategy. Our value framework has two distinct but complementary parts, what we call platform benefits and business outcomes. Platform benefits are the direct benefits an organization can realize by using a given integration technology and approach. Business outcomes, on the other hand, are the broader business objectives driven by integrating data, applications, and devices. Let's focus first on platform benefits. There are three categories of platform benefits, what we call build, run, and manage risk. Across the three categories, there are 9 total platform benefits we take into consideration. In build, the value is in delivering faster, higher quality code. In run, the value is in spending less time, less money on maintenance, change, and hardware, software, infrastructure-related cost. In manage risk, the value is in having better security and governance, improved availability, reliability, and enhanced scalability. With this framework, we're able to quantify each of these benefits. And for the purposes of today, I'll focus on one of these benefits, spending fewer hours building integrations and APIs. And specifically here, we'll focus on spending fewer hours building APIs due to reuse. Walk through the formula. It's as follows. The number of APIs to be built times the expected reuse rate times the time to build an API times the FTE hourly rate. That's the equation. Now let's motivate this with an example from a global retailer. Let's say this global retailer has 50 APIs to build for their project at hand, and they expect a 40% reusable code rate by building with an API-led approach. They spend an average of, let's say, 160 person hours to build each API, and they pay $110 for their FTE hourly rate. Building up the calculation, their reduction in number of APIs to build due to reuse is 20, or, as the equation shows, 50 APIs times a 40% reuse rate. The cost per average API is $16,000, or 160 person hours per API, times that FTE hourly rate. So essentially, for each time this global retailer reuses an API, they save $16,000 in development effort. Multiplying the impact from reuse times the developer cost saved per instance of reuse, or 20 times 16K, you get $320,000 in developer savings from reuse. That's a lot of value that can either be captured as savings to this global retailer's business or reinvested into other projects. Let's now transition to the other side of the equation, business outcomes, which once again are the broader business objectives driven by integrating data, applications, and devices. We start with an integration or API use case on the left. To bring that to life for a business or IT executive, we create linkages moving over to the right. Let's go through each box, Let's go through each of the boxes starting at the left. You've got the integration or API use case, which represents the integrations and APIs to be built. The technology initiative represents a defined technology program. And at MuleSoft, we typically see 25 common initiatives, including move to the cloud, single view of the customer, just a couple examples. Business objectives are the objectives set by business stakeholders. We typically see at MuleSoft 5 objectives, including improving customer experience, improving operational efficiencies, introducing new products or services. Finally, on the far right, value is the value of these three elements on the left combined, typically leading to an increase in revenue, reduction in cost, an improvement in capital utilization, or a reduction in organizational risk. Let's look at an example to build this out further. Here we have Big Bus, the largest operator of bus sightseeing tours around the world. Moving from left to right, their integration use case is to build a booking API that exposes their booking systems to partners such as travel agents and online travel websites. Their technology initiative focuses on providing their partners with real-time access to Big Bus data in order to allow their partners to search Big Bus products, check availability of tours, create digital tickets, among other things. Their business objective is to increase revenue by opening up new sales channels through their partner network. And finally, the value, which in this case represents actual value Big Bus has realized, is over 1,000 partners across 27 countries using this booking API, 26% more trade revenue year over year, and faster onboarding for their partners, leading to faster time to revenue for these partners, and ultimately Big Bus. I'll close by sharing that if you'd like to learn more, we have a number of assets on MuleSoft.com, including a value of integration white paper, the TEI report that we went through today, an online value calculator to get you started with quantifying integration value, infographics, blog posts, etc., all focused on value. You can also check it all out on the resources widget, MuleSoft.com, as well as contact MuleSoft directly. Thanks again for joining today's webinar. We'll now go to Q&A. So as we get to Q&A here, first question is for Corey. The question reads, the study covered ROI and MPV. Can you explain more on how these are calculated? Are these reasonable results for an investment in an API and integration solution?
Sure. So NPV is short for net present value. It takes a series of cash flow values over time and summarizes them into a single number, which reflects today's dollars. A simple definition of this is that the dollar you earn today is worth more to you than a dollar earned in a year, either because you can spend or invest it now, or a dollar spent today is more costly than a dollar you spend next year because you can use or invest that money for an extra year. Net present value requires a discount rate, a percentage showing how much more today's dollar is worth than next year's. Forrester Consulting TI projects projects a 10% rate. A net present value of more than $0 is a positive investment. As for ROI, or return on investment, it's the ratio of net benefits and total costs. So we divide the net present value of the benefits by the net present value of costs. Anything over 0% reflects a positive return on your investment. As for whether these are reasonable results for an API investment in an API and integration solution, well, there's no exact ROI value to decide whether to invest in a project or not. It depends on several factors, including the project scope, your industry, and any risk you may incur by taking on a solution. But any ROI with 3 digits should be considered a strong contender.
Great. Thanks, Corey. On to the next question here. and I can take this one. APIs at my organization are typically created with a single purpose for an application. How can MuleSoft help us? I'll start by saying that, MuleSoft customers find that the ease of API and general code reuse throughout Anypoint platform really encourages a mindset shift at their organizations where developers really start to develop with the consumer of that API or asset in mind. You productize that asset or API for reuse, put it up in a central exchange for easy discoverability. And really the key is to start to do this with APIs that may or may not get reused down the line. But it starts to train the right API-first behaviors amongst your developers. And as such, when you get to this model, you inevitably create productized code that will be reused down the line. You just might not know it at the forefront of development. And finally, the MuleSoft platform is really built to drive and enable this production consumption model. It's really innately baked into the way that the Anypoint platform operates. So I'll go to the next question, and I'll turn this to Corey again. How does Forrester source its assumptions for the model for the TEI study?
Yeah, so the TEI study, it's built upon information that's collected across 4 interviews with customers of MuleSoft's Anypoint platform. The information that we gather from these interviews relates to costs, benefits, and risks associated with adopting the platform. These interviews are anonymized, and the transcripts or recordings of the calls, they're not shared with MuleSoft. Information from these interviews, they're analyzed alongside internal and third-party resources to provide a complete picture of the total economic impact of purchase decisions.
Great, thank you. I'll take this next one. The question is, companies starting out with MuleSoft will not have an immediate percentage reuse metric to apply to their calculation of platform benefits. What number is typical or a realistic benchmark for an organization to use in this calculation when starting out? So based on kind of running these analyses across our customer base globally, we typically see an average customer benchmark of, at very least, 40% reuse by year 3 of the adoption curve. And this can be lower, this can be higher. There's some variables at play that will determine it. But a good benchmark to start with is a linear ramp up to 40% year 1, 2, and 3. That's typically what we start with our analysis. Go to the next one here. So I'll take this one. How would the value framework translate to small and medium-sized businesses? Can MuleSoft help me if I don't work at a large enterprise? And I'd say, yeah, fundamentally, absolutely. The framework is really industry, enterprise size, agnostic. Organizations in a given industry will more or less have similar value chains, right? As such, there'll be similar inputs, there'll be similar outputs that can be measured. This framework, it takes this all into account, but for a smaller organization, it'd probably just be at a smaller scale. But fundamentally, it's industry and size of enterprise agnostic. So let's see here. Next question, I can take this one as well. I understand that Anypoint platform enables the reuse of APIs, but what else does it do to drive ROI for customers? So we had a slide earlier that showed kind of the platform benefit and business outcome framework. I'll focus on platform benefits here because that's typically correlated value, causal value, whereas business outcomes is correlated value. When we look at platform benefits across build, run, and manage risk, within build, it's all about driving project speed, quickly on-ramping your developers, delivering better code quality. So if we double-click into project speed, for example, a function of speed is delivering through reuse and leveraging those assets downstream so your developers don't have to redevelop code time and again. Another function of driving project speed is SDLC efficiencies. So typically, when we work with customers prior to their investment at MuleSoft, we'll assess where there are opportunities to drive integration SDLC efficiencies across requirements gathering, design, development, QA, test, all the way through operation. So we absolutely can inspect for those things with this framework, and that delivers higher ROI. From a run perspective, reuse plays a part there as well, but we can also evaluate with this framework a reduction in hardware, software, and infrastructure cost. A simple example there could be if prior to an investment in a technology like MuleSoft, your integration platform was 100% on-premises, and you're evaluating bringing in MuleSoft, the iPaaS solution, to take out that on-prem infrastructure hardware cost. So that would contribute to ROI as well. There are other factors around managed risk, improving, once again, security and governance, improving scale, reliability, and availability of the integrations that you build with an API-led approach, all significantly contributing to ROI. Going through additional questions here. So I'll ask this one to Corey. Can you provide the Excel template for these calculations of ROI and other TEI KPIs?
I don't think we can share the Excel template, but again, you can go through the study where it has the full tables included in there, and you can see how it aligns with what you're looking at internally, and all the assumptions and the reasoning is included in that study. If you have any additional questions that you have about the model, you can follow up over email.
Great, thanks. Next question is, and I can take this one, is the 160 hours per API based on historical data using MuleSoft? And so typically, if you want to evaluate the potential benefits of kind of a go-forward strategy, you want to benchmark that go-forward against something historical. So in this case, for the example that we called out in the presentation, we took the historical average to build, call it a medium complexity integration or API, 160 hours. So we'll then benchmark with a technology like MuleSoft or adopting an API-like connectivity approach. What are the benefits in driving that down to, let's say, 80 hours or 40 hours, whatever the case may be. But you always want to start with a historical benchmark against which to measure the future benefit. Through. So I'll throw this to you, Corey. Does the ROI and TEI vary based on industry that you interviewed?
So I wouldn't say it's necessarily based on the industry. I do see another question here asking about applying the TEI to higher education institutions as well. I think it's more based on what your goals are for the applications that you're building and the complexity of them. So maybe I guess that may vary by industry, but I think it's not necessarily industry driven so much as driven by the goals at your organization and what you plan to build using MuleSoft.
Awesome. Okay. Well, I think this concludes the webinar for today. On behalf of Forrester Consulting, MuleSoft, Corey, myself, we want to thank you for attending. Enjoy the rest of your day.